Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Martin Voss always believed his marriage was a well-managed portfolio. It was built on a foundation of sound principles, commitment, mutual interest, and above all, consistency. As a senior financial analyst, he understood structures. He built them at work, creating complex models to predict market behavior. And he had built one at home, with his wife, Lena. Their life in the coastal city of Port Sterling was a testament to his planning. The house was secure. The accounts were healthy. The future was a predictable, upward trending line. He was a reliable husband. He worked long hours, came home every night, and paid every bill without a word of complaint. This, to him, was the language of love. It was not spoken in poems, but in pension contributions and promptly paid insurance premiums. Lena, 38 years old, was the variable he had willingly introduced into his equation. She was vibrant, loud, and possessed a social gravity that pulled people into her orbit. In the beginning, her energy was a welcome counterbalance to his own reserved nature. He was the sturdy, quiet harbor. She was the magnificent ship, sailing in with stories from the open sea. He had found her laughter, a booming, unrestrained sound, to be infectious. He enjoyed watching her hold court at dinner parties, her hands gesturing wildly as she recounted some amusing anecdote. She brought a necessary chaos to his orderly world. But over the 12 years of their marriage, he had begun to perceive this chaos differently. The variable had become volatile. Her extroversion now came with a sharp edge, honed into little barbs, disguised as humor. Jabs about him being too predictable, too serious. A man who scheduled spontaneity. Martin has our entire summer holiday mapped out on a spreadsheet, she would tell their friends. They would chuckle politely. He would laugh along, because that was the expected response. But inside, he would file the comment away. Another piece of data, suggesting a growing discrepancy in their shared valuation of the marriage. He was consistent. To him, that meant love. To her, he was beginning to suspect. It just meant boring. The fracture point. The moment the foundation showed its first undeniable crack, occurred on a Friday night. They were at an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, Il Corvo, with 3 other couples. The air was thick with the scent of garlic and expensive wine. The conversation flowed easily, a gentle river of work complaints, holiday plans, and parenting woes. Martin was relaxed, nursing a glass of Chianti, watching Lena charm the table. She was in her element. Then, during a lull in the conversation, one of their friends, a woman named Sophie, turned to Lena. "Honestly, Lena," she said warmly, "how do you and Martin keep it so fresh after all these years?" A silence fell. The table turned their attention to Lena. She laughed. That familiar, booming laugh. She looked across the table at Martin, a smile on her face that he couldn't quite decipher. It wasn't warm. It wasn't cruel. It was performative. "Oh, keep it fresh," she said. Her voice, loud enough to carry. "Look. We're more like roommates, you know." She paused. For dramatic effect, raising her wine glass in a mock toast. "We split the bills. We share the house. The rest." She let the word hang in the air. "The rest is just each of us doing our own thing." The table was silent for 2 full seconds. Then, a wave of uncomfortable, nervous laughter broke the tension. Everyone looked at Martin. He felt a hot flush creep up his neck. A warmth that had nothing to do with the wine. He forced a smile. A tight, unnatural stretching of his lips. He tried to play it off, to join in the joke. But inside, something fundamental had broken. Roommates. The word echoed in his mind. Stripping away 12 years of shared history, of quiet Sunday mornings, of holding her hand in a dark movie theater. It wasn't a joke. It was a public declaration of his irrelevance. It was a way to diminish him, to reduce his role in her life to that of a co-signer on a lease. All while in front of people he considered friends. He didn't say another word. He drained his wine in a single, long swallow, and stared down at the intricate pattern on his plate. For the remainder of the dinner, he was a silent observer. Lena, seemingly oblivious. carried on. As if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of their life. She laughed, told more stories. And was, as always, the radiant center of attention, as if nothing had happened at all. The drive home from Il Corvo was a 20-minute exercise in silence. The city lights of Port Sterling blurred past the windows. Streaks of gold and red against the dark glass. Martin saw none of it. His focus was entirely internal. The silence in the car was not peaceful. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket, filled with the unspoken accusation of Lena's words. He gripped the leather steering wheel. His knuckles white. Beside him, Lena was illuminated by the cool, blue-white glow of her phone screen. She scrolled through her social media feed, a small, serene smile playing on her lips. To Martin, her casual indifference was more damning than any argument could have been. It was proof that the incident at the restaurant, so cataclysmic for him, had been a trivial, forgettable moment for her. He had to try. He had to know if he had misinterpreted the data. Lena, he began. His voice sounded rusty. Foreign in the quiet car. What you said at dinner. About us being roommates. Were you serious? She didn't look up from her phone. What? Oh, that. A small, dismissive sigh. Martin, relax. It was just a joke. Everyone laughed. I didn't laugh, he said. His voice, flat. Now she did look up. Her expression, one of mild annoyance. As if he were a difficult child, making a fuss over nothing. You're too sensitive, she said. Her tone, final. It was just kidding around. There's no need to get all worked up. She turned her attention back to her phone. Effectively ending the conversation. He said nothing more. Her dismissal, her casual rewriting of the event as a failing of his. His sensitivity, not her cruelty, was the confirmation he needed. There was no point in arguing with someone who refused to acknowledge that a wound had been inflicted. When they arrived home, he parked the car in the garage. The automatic door closed behind them with a heavy thud. He went straight to the guest room on the ground floor. He didn't announce it. He just did it. He laid down on the perfectly made bed. The crisp, unused sheets cold against his skin. Lena didn't follow. He heard her footsteps go up the main staircase. To their bedroom. He heard the bathroom door click shut. The sound of the shower running for a long time. When the water stopped, she went straight to bed. There was no good night. She didn't even ask why he wasn't in their room. Her silence was a form of consent. She accepted the new arrangement. Without question. Martin lay awake all night, staring at the unfamiliar shadows on the guest room ceiling. His analytical mind, usually occupied with market trends and risk assessment, was now turned inward. Auditing his own life. He began to replay the last year. But this time, with the roommate comment as the analytical filter. The pieces began to connect. With an alarming, sickening clarity. Her frequent late nights. Explained away as work-happy hours. The way her phone was always placed screen down on the table. The flashes of irritation that crossed her face whenever he asked who she was texting. Her constant fatigue. Her constant need for space. Which he, in his trusting foolishness, had always granted. Their physical intimacy had dwindled to almost nothing. He had attributed it to stress. To the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. He had been a fool. He had been looking at the individual data points, and accepting them at face value. Now, seeing the trend line, the pattern was undeniable. This wasn't a phase. It was a strategy. It was a secret life. Running in parallel to the one he thought they shared. As the first gray light of dawn filtered through the blinds, a cold resolve settled over him. He would not confront her with tears and accusations. That was not his way. Emotional confrontations were messy, unpredictable, and gave the advantage to the person who cared less. He needed data. He needed hard, irrefutable evidence. He would approach this problem as he would any other. With logic, discretion, and a thorough investigation. He picked up his phone and searched for the number of a private investigator his firm sometimes used for sensitive corporate matters. He would not be the weeping, betrayed husband. He would be the client. Commissioning a report on a compromised asset. The investigator, a man named Mr. Finch, was as discreet and professional as Martin had hoped. He was a man of few words and clear directives. "I'll need a week," Finch had said over the phone, "to gather a comprehensive picture. You won't hear from me until I have something solid." Martin agreed. 7 days. 168 hours. It felt like an eternity. And yet, it was a finite, manageable time frame. He could endure it. During that week, Martin became a master of duplicity. He maintained their routine with a chilling precision. He went to work. He came home. He inquired about her day with the same mild interest as always. If Lena noticed a change in him, a new stillness in his eyes, or a lack of warmth in his voice, she gave no indication. Or perhaps, as he now suspected, she simply didn't care enough to notice. She was too absorbed in her own world. He, however, watched her, with the detached focus of a scientist observing a specimen under a microscope. He became an expert on the nuances of her behavior. He noted the way her smile was different when she looked at her phone versus when she looked at him. One was genuine and unguarded, the other was a polite, practiced habit. He noticed the extra care she took with her appearance on certain days. A new dress. A little more makeup. These were not for him. On Monday, she came home late, smelling of wine and a perfume that wasn't hers. "Long day with a client," she'd said, breezing past him into the kitchen. He just nodded. On Wednesday evening, she announced she was going out with friends. "It's just Sophie and the girls, we're going to that new cocktail bar by the marina." Martin watched her get ready. The careful application of lipstick. The glint of excitement in her eyes. "Have fun," he said. His voice, perfectly even. He ate his dinner alone. The silence of the large house amplifying the sound of his own chewing. Every interaction was a test of his self-control. He felt a constant, low-grade hum of anger beneath the surface. A tightly coiled spring of resentment. But he did not let it show. He was gathering evidence. An emotional outburst would only compromise the investigation. He was playing the long game. He saw her through a new lens. Her laughter no longer sounded infectious. It sounded hollow. Her stories no longer seemed charming. They seemed like carefully constructed performances. He saw a woman who had built a life on his stability, while seeking her thrills elsewhere. She had outsourced the boring parts of life, the mortgage, the utilities, the quiet companionship to him, freeing her up to live a more exciting existence in secret. The roommate analogy had been more accurate than he could have ever imagined. On Friday, exactly 1 week after that humiliating dinner, she told him her plans for the next day. "I'm heading to the gym in the morning for that intense spinning class. Then I'm having lunch with a coworker. I'll probably be back mid-afternoon." "All right," he said, looking up from his laptop. "Enjoy yourself." His performance was flawless. He was the stable, predictable, slightly boring husband she believed him to be. The ghost who paid the bills. He was playing his part perfectly. Right up to the end. He was calm. He was patient. He was waiting. All he needed now was the report. Saturday morning arrived. Cool and overcast. Lena got ready for the gym, pulling on expensive athletic wear and tying her hair back. She hummed a tune as she gathered her things. "Don't wait for me for lunch," she called out cheerfully as she headed for the door. "I won't," Martin said from the kitchen. His voice, calm. He watched through the window as her car pulled out of the driveway and disappeared down the street. Less than 5 minutes later, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. He answered. "Mr. Voss," a quiet, professional voice said. "It's Finch. I have the report ready. You can come by the office to pick it up whenever you're free." Martin's heart began to beat a heavy, deliberate rhythm against his ribs. "I'm on my way now," he said. His voice, steady. The investigator's office was in a nondescript building 20 minutes away. Martin walked in. The office, Spartan and clean. "Mr. Finch," a man in his 50s with tired eyes, shook his hand and gestured for him to sit. There was no small talk. Finch slid a thick manila envelope across the polished surface of the desk. "Martin," he said, his voice tinged with a slight, professional pity. "I'm sorry for what you're about to see. You asked for the truth. And this is it." Martin took the envelope. His hands were perfectly still. He opened the clasp and slid the contents out. It was a comprehensive dossier of his wife's betrayal. There were photographs. Dozens of them. Printed in high resolution. Photos of Lena meeting a handsome, athletic man in a coffee shop. Photos of them laughing together. Photos of them entering a discreet motel on the outskirts of the city, the Polaris Inn. There were time-stamped logs of her car, parked outside the motel for hours at a time. Always on the days she claimed to be at late meetings, or out with the girls. The man in the photos was identified as Damien. A personal trainer, at the very gym where Lena claimed to take her spinning classes. Then there were the message logs. Finch had, through legal means tied to the family phone plan registered in Martin's name, retrieved them. The words were more brutal than the images. Lena's messages to Damien were filled with endearments he hadn't heard from her in years. "Can't wait to see you, my love." Counting down the minutes. But the most devastating messages were the ones about him. She complained that Martin was boring, predictable, and passionless. In one exchange, she had written a line that seared itself into his brain. "Sometimes I forget he even exists. It's like living with a ghost who pays the bills." A ghost who pays the bills. He read every word. He looked at every photo. He absorbed every detail of the timeline Finch had meticulously assembled. And as he did not feel the crushing sadness or the explosive rage he had anticipated. Instead, a strange and profound calm washed over him. It was the feeling he got at work when a complex financial model finally clicked into place, when all the variables resolved and the outcome became clear. It was clarity. Cold, sharp, and absolute. All the confusion, the self-doubt, the nagging insecurity of the past year vanished. He hadn't been overly sensitive. He hadn't been paranoid. He had been right. His data had been correct all along. He looked up at Mr. Finch. "Thank you," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "This is exactly what I needed." He paid the agreed-upon amount in cash, took the envelope, and walked out of the office. On the drive home, his mind was not a whirlwind of grief. It was a spreadsheet, with columns for assets, liabilities, and action items. He would not scream. He would not cry. He would not beg for an explanation. Those were the actions of a man with something to lose. He had just received definitive proof that he had already lost everything long ago. She had reduced their marriage to a business arrangement in front of their friends. Now, he would treat her accordingly. She was no longer his wife. She was a tenant. A liability. An asset to be liquidated. And he was about to handle the eviction. Martin arrived home to the silent, empty house. He placed the envelope on the living room coffee table, and went upstairs to their bedroom. For a moment, he stood in the doorway, observing the room they had shared for over a decade. Her scent lingered in the air. Her things were strewn about with a casualness that spoke of absolute security. A makeup brush on the nightstand. A scarf draped over a chair. A security she was about to lose. He worked with methodical efficiency. He pulled out the large suitcases from the top of the closet. He began to empty her side of the wardrobe, folding her expensive dresses, her blouses, her jeans. He moved to the shoe rack, pairing up her dozens of heels and sandals. He cleared her vanity, sweeping bottles of perfume, jars of cream, and pallets of makeup into a box. Every item he touched was a memory. A ghost of a life he now knew to be a lie. The red dress she wore on their 10th anniversary. The silk scarf he bought her in Paris. He felt nothing. They were just objects. Inventory. To be removed. When he had packed every last item, he carried the suitcases and boxes, one by one, down to the garage. He arranged them in neat, orderly rows. The space she once occupied in their shared life had been systematically erased. He went back inside. He took a selection of the most damning photos from the report. Lena and Damien kissing in his car. The two of them walking into the Polaris Inn, and arranged them in a fan on the coffee table. He placed a printed copy of the message logs next to them. On top of the pile, he left a single, handwritten note on his personal letterhead. The message was firm and unwavering. Roommates split expenses. Tenants who do not contribute are evicted. Your belongings are in the garage. You have until Monday at noon to collect them. From this point forward, all communication will be through my lawyer. His next call was to a 24-hour locksmith. Within an hour, a quiet, efficient man had changed every lock on the house. Martin paid him and slipped the 2 new, gleaming keys into his pocket. Then, he sat down in his armchair, the one facing the front door, and he waited. Lena arrived home around 3 in the afternoon. Smiling. Her gym bag slung over her shoulder. He watched on the security camera feed on his phone as she walked up the path. She put her key in the lock. Turned it. Nothing. She frowned, trying again. Still nothing. A look of confusion crossed her face. She rang the doorbell. Martin opened the door, but did not step aside. He stood, blocking the entrance. His arms crossed over his chest. He looked her directly in the eye. "What's going on?" "The key isn't working," she said. A nervous laugh in her voice. "I changed the locks," he replied. His voice, flat and even. Her smile faltered. "What? Why would you do that?" "Martin, what kind of joke is this?" "It's no joke, Lena. Your things are in the garage. You have until Monday at noon to pick them up." The color drained from her face. She finally understood. "Martin, what are you talking about?" He finally stepped aside, gesturing into the house. "Go, and see for yourself." Confused, trembling slightly, she walked past him into the living room. She stopped dead when she saw the coffee table. She stared at the photographs, spread out like a winning hand in a poker game. Her own face, smiling, kissing another man. She picked one up. Her hand shaking so badly the image blurred. She dropped it as if it were burning hot, and grabbed another. "Martin, I can explain," she stammered. Her voice, barely a whisper. "Explain what?" His voice was cold, controlled. The voice of a man reading a quarterly report. "That you've been sleeping with your personal trainer for months? That you call me a bill-paying ghost behind my back? That you found our marriage so irrelevant? You reduced me to a roommate in front of our friends?" Tears began to stream down her face. "It was a mistake. I was confused." You were confused," he repeated, letting out a short, humorless laugh. "You were so confused. That you managed to schedule clandestine meetings at a motel 3 times a week? So confused. That you sent messages saying you barely remember I exist?" She tried to move toward him, to touch his arm, but he took a sharp step back. "Martin, please. We can talk about this. We can fix this." "There is nothing to fix," he said. The finality in his voice, like a slamming door. "You defined the terms of our relationship, Lena. You called me your roommate. So I'm treating you like one. And tenants who don't pay their share get evicted." She sank to her knees on the expensive rug. Her body racked with sobs. "I love you," she cried. "I messed up. But I love you." He looked down at the weeping woman on the floor. He felt a flicker of something. Not love. Not even hatred. It was a mixture of pity and contempt. "If that's what you call love, Lena," he said quietly, "then I would rather live alone." Just then, the doorbell rang again. A sharp, insistent chime. Martin went to answer it. Outside stood Lena's parents. Her mother looking frantic, her father stern and silent. Lena had obviously called them in a panic. Her mother pushed past him into the house. "What is going on here?" "My daughter called me in tears, saying you kicked her out." Martin calmly pointed to the coffee table. "You should probably look at that, before you jump to any conclusions." Lena's mother walked over, picked up the photos, and flipped through them. Her expression shifting from anger, to shock, to disgust. Her father stood by the door, his face unreadable. When she finished, she dropped the photos back on the table, and turned on her daughter. "Is this true?" Lena didn't answer. She just kept crying. Her father, a man of few words, finally spoke. He looked not at his daughter, but at Martin. "You are well within your rights," he said. His voice, low and firm. "I am sorry for what my daughter has done." Her mother started to argue, to defend her. But her father cut her off. "There is nothing to defend. She cheated. She humiliated him. Now, she reaps what she sowed." Martin turned his gaze back to Lena, still crumpled on the floor. "You have until Monday," he said. After that, whatever is left in the garage goes to charity. He picked up his car keys from the hall table, and walked out the door, leaving her there, with her parents, and the wreckage of the life she had so carelessly destroyed. Martin spent that weekend in a hotel. A clean, anonymous space, where he could breathe. On Monday morning, he returned home. The garage was empty. Lena had taken everything. He walked through the silent rooms of the house. Rooms that now felt vast and quiet. For the first time in months, he didn't feel a sense of dread or suspicion. He felt empty. It was a clean, uncomplicated emptiness. It was peace. The story spread through their social circle like wildfire. Friends took sides. Most, upon learning the details, sided with him. The public humiliation at the restaurant, once seen as an awkward joke, was now recontextualized as the cruel prelude to a sordid affair. Lena's social standing, which she had prized so highly, evaporated overnight. She tried to contact him. Texts, emails, tearful voicemails. She even showed up at the house a few times. But he never opened the door. He hired the best divorce lawyer in the city, and instructed that all communication go through him. He was building a firewall around his new life. Lena, with no income of her own, and no claim to his assets due to a prenuptial agreement he had insisted on years ago, had to move back in with her parents. Damien, the personal trainer, vanished from her life the moment the drama began. The exciting, passionate affair could not survive the harsh light of reality. The social circle she had cultivated turned its back on her. And Martin, the man she had dismissed as a ghost, was systematically and quietly rebuilding. 3 months later, he sold the house. It was too large for one person, too filled with the echoes of a life that had been a lie. He bought a modern, minimalist apartment downtown, with a panoramic view of the city. He decorated it himself, with clean lines, dark wood, and leather. It was a space that was entirely his. He started reconnecting with old friends, going to the gym, and reviving hobbies he had let slide. He felt as if a great weight had been lifted. He felt alive again. Not with the chaotic energy of Lena, but with a quiet, self-contained strength. One afternoon, he was sitting at an outdoor cafe near his office, enjoying a coffee, when he saw her across the street. He almost didn't recognize her. She looked different. Thinner. Her once vibrant hair was dull, pulled back in a simple ponytail. She was wearing plain clothes, a stark contrast to the stylish outfits she used to favor. She saw him, too. For a moment, she hesitated. A flicker of uncertainty on her face. Then, she took a deep breath, and crossed the street, stopping in front of his table. "Hi, Martin," she said. Her voice, soft. He simply nodded, his expression neutral. "Lena." She swallowed hard, her eyes searching his face for something. Pity. Anger. Anything. She found nothing. Are you doing okay?" "I am," he said. And it was the simple truth. Better than ever. She looked down at her hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For everything." He took a slow sip of his coffee, considering her words. "I was sorry, too," he said, his voice even. "For a long time. But now, I don't feel anything at all." She opened her mouth to say something more. But he stood up, placing a few bills on the table to cover his coffee. He walked away without another word. He did not look back. There was nothing left for him there. The account was closed. He had learned a valuable lesson. Words have weight. Calling someone a roommate can be the final data point that reveals a catastrophic failure in the system. Lena had learned too late that respect isn't a bonus feature, it's the entire foundation. And Martin had learned that sometimes the greatest act of self-preservation, the most definitive assertion of one's own value, is knowing when to liquidate a failed asset and walk away. In the end, she lost a husband who had provided everything. And he, in the ensuing silence, finally got his dignity back. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.